Prosper log. Show date 140712. First entry. Commander Big McLarge Huge recording. How's everybody doing? What Prosper is a YouTube blog where I recognize friends' birthdays, I greet other people, and I basically talk about a Star Trek episode of choice. I'm going to start out with, before I begin though, I want to give a shout out to my house commander, my wife Robyn, who 9 years ago today passed me a note with a phone number on it, and I made the call that pretty much led me to where I am today. If it weren't for her, only Lord knows how I would have ended up. So Robyn, thank you for giving me that note, and I love you so very much, and thank you for everything. With that being said, let's drink. For this special show, I have a special beer glass that Robyn made for me 2 years ago, in Germany. She bought the glass, she took it to an engraver, had it made. And what a good way to start this off, but with a Guinness Draught. 4.8%, I believe. Have to double check with our friends over at Beer and Song of the Day. Oh, check them out too. www.facebook.com/Beer and Song of the Day. It's spelled out. Beerandsongoftheday. Tell them Commander Big McLarge Hughes sent you. I stole this from him. Proper beer opening apparatus. Proper technique. It's never happened before. 45-degree angle right into the beer consumption apparatus. The Guinness is today's drink of choice. Well, cheers. Ooh, that goes down good every time. Alright, the birthdays I was telling about. Birthdays from the past week. If you had a birthday last week and I know about it, I'll let you know. I'm going to go ahead and recognize you now. I'm going to start out with Kelsey Lynn. Hey, how are you doing? I know you through your sister Megan. She and I used to work together back at the good old gas station in Hagerstown. I'm glad you finally got out of that town. I'm glad that you are doing bigger and better things yourself. And congratulations on the little baby. Happy birthday to you also. Next on the list. Oh, where'd that come from? Next on the list. The guy I went to school with. Robert Seaton. Robert graduated the same year I did. Hagerstown class of 2001. I don't care what anybody says. That is the best graduating class. Ever. Frickin' ever. But yeah, pretty much known him since 4th grade on. I think it was 4th grade on. That's what I'm telling everybody anyway. 4th grade on. Robert, happy birthday to you, buddy. Congratulations to you on your recent engagement, too. Alright. Next up. It's a gal I know from here. Earth Station, Okinawa, actually. Renee Yu. Renee, happy birthday to you. Renee was at one time my boss here. But she has since moved on to bigger and better things. And she is on her way to the land of old people. Yep, Florida. So, congratulations on your upcoming move. Happy birthday, and I'll drink one with you. All right, next on the list, Ashley Becker. Now, when I met her father, Mad Dog Becker, we were all in England together. She was, I want to say, well, she was a kid anyway. I'm not gonna give away anybody's age on here, but needless to say, congratulations to you on recent advances in your life, and congratulations and the best of luck to you on future endeavors. Next on the list. Oh, my Deon Springfield. This is a guy I worked with in Germany. He and I would watch locals together. Make sure they did their job and make sure they didn't go where they shouldn't. Deon, my friend, happy birthday to you. I hope you're drinking one of these with me. And last but not least, we are going to pay tribute to my father's significant other, Deborah Clements Kirk. Deborah, how you doing? I hope everything's going all right for you. I hope the doctors are figuring everything out that's going on for you, and I hope Dad spoils the crap out of you today. Cheers. Alrighty. That's it for the birthdays. Let's move on to the additional greetings. We're going to go with Michelle Nix. Now, when I said I wanted to do a weekly YouTube show that was Star Trek oriented, Michelle was the one that actually coined the title Prosper. And she is also the reason why I date it with the show date the way I do. Michelle, thank you very much for all your insight and for all your support on this. And needless to say, without you, this show wouldn't be the way it is. Cheers. Next on the list. This is a gal that I know through our friend Josh Baker over at Beer and Song of the Day. Stephanie Carpenter. Unfortunately I didn't get to meet you while I was down in Abilene, Yeehaw, Texas. But hey, I understand things happen. I mean, schedules don't exactly line up. But hey, we tried. So, Stephanie, good luck to you, and I'll drink one with you. What the hell? And last but not least, this gal is the reason that the Prosper Facebook page, the likes have jumped 400% in about 16 hours. Kat Thompson. Kat, thank you very much for sharing my page. Also, thank you for spreading the word and for helping get all these likes. I really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the show. Alright, now, since this is the first YouTube show that deals with Star Trek like this from myself, I thought it important to do a little bit of background. Imagine yourself back in 1966, September 8th, 8:30 p.m. You hit NBC, you see three guys on a planet. You see a nice few-minute intro. One guy chasing after a gorgeous blonde. The next thing you know, you hear this.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
That's right. The ever-famous, immortal Star Trek intro, narrated by William Shatner, heard the first time on September 8th, 1966. Now, the reason I chose The Man Trap, not only was it because it was the first broadcast episode of Star Trek, but the writer of that episode was actually born this week and is 85 years old himself. So it had to be done. It had to be done. With that, I'm going to go ahead and go into the background information. Try to stay awake with me. I know this is dry reading. It was dry for me reading it, but hey, you learn something new every day. If you didn't learn something from this, I guess you already knew it. The Man Trap was the first Star Trek episode to air on September 8th, 1966. As Bob Justman and Herb Solow recount in Inside Star Trek, The Real Story, the decision to broadcast it before any of the other limited number of completed episodes was largely a process of elimination. Although it had good special effects and demonstrated the series' intelligent approach to alien life forms, the Corbomite maneuver was not chosen because its completion was delayed by the post-production process, and virtually all of its action took place aboard the Enterprise. Excuse me. The latter drawback also weighed against Charlie X, which was further deemed too gentle a tale because it dealt with the problems of an adolescent. Mudd's Women was out of the running because no one wanted to lead off the series with a risque story about selling women in space. Who would do a thing like that anyway? The second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, was considered too expository in terms of its background to be broadcast so early. Justman himself favored The Naked Time because he thought it would provide an ideal introduction to the different characters' personalities. In the end, The Man Trap won out because its straightforward action plot was not considered too exotic. It had the advantage of a monster to thrill the viewers, and it fulfilled the series' Strange New Worlds concept. So now you know why it was chosen first. An early title for this episode was Damsel with a Dulcimer. Professor Crater was supposed to drive a tractor around the archaeological site in the early story outline. Can you imagine in the 23rd century somebody puttering around on a John Deere? That's ludicrous. I'm glad they wrote that out. In Johnson and Black's script version of the 13 June 1966, the moral dilemma of killing the last of its kind had been more pronounced, with the creature, disguised as McCoy, trying to reason with the crew. Also in that version, Professor Crater lives in the end, mourning the loss of the creature. Gene Roddenberry's rewrite for the final draft toned down the emotional aspects of their relationship in favor of a more straightforward monster plot, having the creature kill its own companion and lover. I think they meant killed by its own no, he was already dead. I'll shut up and keep going. The episode bears a resemblance to an earlier George Clayton Johnson story called All of Us Are Dying, later adapted by Rod Serling for the Twilight Zone episode The Four of Us Are Dying, which first aired on January 1st, 1960. That show also involved a person who could make himself into whomever he chose. The episode featured actors Harry Towns, Philip Pine, Peter Bracco, and a score written by Jerry Goldsmith. Even as early as 1960, Goldsmith was being awesome. As the first episode actually telecast, the opening credits are slightly different from most other first season shows. Gene Roddenberry has created by credits, and there is no starring before William Shatner's name. This version of the credits was used only once more in Charlie X. In this episode, Garrison True and Larry Anthony both speak several on-screen lines, yet are not listed in the closing credits. In the first season, directors and writers are not even credited until the very end of each episode, while they're credited right after the title of each episode beginning in season 2. I mean, come on. Do we honestly care who wrote or directed the episode? Honestly? I mean, yeah, it's good trivia for later, but do we really care? Oh, I didn't say that. Anyway, moving on. The very first Enterprise crew members whom the television audience saw in this premiere episode were Spock, Uhura, and Leslie, sitting in the command module on the bridge, which in fact is a recycled shot from The Naked Time. You're going to see a lot of that in the original series, where they recycle shots of personnel in corridors and on the bridge or engineering or wherever. You're going to see a lot of recycled people shots. You got to save money somehow, right? Darn right. James Doohan, the actor who plays Scotty, does not appear in this episode, but he is briefly heard on Kirk's communicator in dialogue lifted from another episode. They don't even limit it to just people in corridors. They even talk about lines on the communicator being lifted. Can you believe that? William Shatner has severe problems to this day with persistent ringing in his ears, a condition known as tinnitus. He says it was caused by explosions going off near him during his television work. In both this episode and Arena, explosions occur very close to Shatner. Leonard Nimoy also has tinnitus due to this occurrence, but not as severe as Shatner's. There's a scene in it. I'll go on. Guest stars Gene Bal and Vince Howard were both regular performers playing faculty members on the 1963-65 public high school drama Mr. Novak, a program on which many future Trek performers guested, including George Takei, oh my, and Walter Koenig. Nuclear whistles! The costume of the M113 creature was designed by Hua Chang. Chang obviously used a modified gas mask as the creature's mouth. The costume later appeared displayed on the wall of Trelane's castle in the Squire of Gothos. Later, the creature found a new home in Justman's office, along with the two Gorn suits from Arena and the frozen mannequin from The Naked Time. It's all about recycling. They even knew it back then. Start recycling. We might need it someday. The suit worn by Barnhart bears a strong resemblance to the radiation suits seen in the Outer Limits episode, The Production and Decay of Strange Particles, which guest starred Leonard Nimoy. Even down to the numbers seen on the suit. There were several other holdovers from the Outer Limits in Star Trek, notably creatures created by Janos Prohaska, that were modified to create creatures seen in the Talus Zoo in The Cage, and of course the Horta in The Devil in the Dark. For the first time, Uhura wears a red uniform instead of a gold one. We'll go into that later. A female crew member wearing pants can be seen on a corridor. Charlie X is the last episode featuring a crew woman wearing pants. In one of the Red Alert scenes of an Enterprise corridor, the crewmen are wearing turtleneck uniforms. It is a recycled, originally unused shot from where no man has gone before. It can be seen at the beginning of Act 1 in the original pre-broadcast version of the second pilot. I actually watched that the other day. That was interesting, to say the least. To think how that would have actually worked. To think of how this actually would have aired in the 1960s. That was incredible. That episode can also be found in the third season Blu-ray set. The visual of planet M113 from orbit is reused footage previously representing Alpha 177 in The Enemy Within, although that segment ended up airing after this one. This planet effect was reused again many times during the series as Tantalus 5 in Dagger of the Mind, Planet Q and Benicia in The Conscience of the King, the Iron Silica planet in The Alternative Factor, Beta 3 in The Return of the Archons, Janus 6 in The Devil in the Dark, Organia in Errand of Mercy, Mud's Planet in I, Mud, Argus 10 and Obsession, and Ardana in The Cloudminders. A ricochet sound effect is used when Crater is stunned by the phaser shot, the only time this effect is used in the series. Thereafter, Alfred Rider's voice is slowed down to indicate the stun effect. I don't know if that was the only time that happened in the series. That's a good question. If anybody knows whether or not that is the only time an actor's voice is slowed down to indicate the stun effect, let me know down here. Let me know down here in the comments section, and I will hook you up next week. In early episodes like this one, there are up and down indicators that light up outside the turbolifts. Although they are seen in subsequent episodes, only in the earliest ones do they actually light up to indicate the direction of travel. Turbolift indicator lights later show up in engineering above one of the consoles. The bridge sound effects still retain sounds from the two pilots. By the time Roddenberry left as producer, those original sounds were not heard again, with the brief exceptions of being heard while on the bridges of the Exeter and the Lexington. The DVD releases, however, have overlaid these older sound effects in every episode. They are represented as rear channel sounds, which give the episodes a surround sound effect. When Nancy Crater first walks into the dig headquarters, Nichelle Nichols singing from Charlie X is briefly dubbed in. Curiously, Nancy's mouth does not appear to move as she is singing. Imagine that. If only somebody could speak with her mouth not moving. Dang it, I just did it right there. Anyway, just prior to filming, Alfred Rider, who played Robert Crater, suffered a severe arm injury which prevented him from using that arm. Despite the pain, he performed the role without complaint. That's some good stuff right there. I give that man a salute. Although this episode was filmed before The Naked Time, stock footage from that episode is used for the bridge scene at the very beginning. Kirk's run down the corridor to sickbay is also pulled from The Naked Time, as is a reaction shot of Kirk when Spock is telling him about the Borgia plant on the sickbay view screen. Also, a recycled shot from What Are Little Girls Made Of, showing Spock in the captain's chair, is used for the same bridge scene at the beginning. The shot of the computer monitor in sickbay, then in McCoy's quarters, is the same shot. In the same shot is recycled from the Corbomite maneuver, with the close-ups of Kirk and Spock matted in during post-production. This is the only segment of Star Trek in which we see McCoy's quarters. A pan cut along a blank wall allowed two McCoys to appear in the same room. The three cylindrical containers on the shelf in McCoy's room were previously seen on Ben Childress' table in Mudd's Women. They later appear in the large lighted panel in McCoy's lab. The ship's arboretum is a redress of the sickbay set. That explains a couple things. At 2 points in this episode, the doors can be heard opening and closing without the dubbed sound effect. Once, when the creature as Green leaves the botany lab, and again during the final scene on the bridge. Kirk's communicator flops open as he is crawling along the ground during the shootout with Crater. When Kirk opens his communicator to respond to Spock during the scene, there is no sound effect. One aspect of the first season episodes is that the crew are not just walking in the corridors. They are often engaged in maintenance work. Maybe that. I just lost my place. Okay. They are often engaged in maintenance work, checking out equipment in the corridors and so on. This is evident in the man trap in Charlie X, especially. Minor crew members also carried on casual conversations and a feeling of the ship as a real community was created. As when Uhura asked Bobby to fix her rattling door, or when two crewmen admired Janice Rand. These details about everyday life on a starship largely faded away as the series progressed. I don't like that. I mean, these people, they're out there alone for 5 years. They've got nobody to count on but each other and themselves. You'd think they'd keep a sense of family after all that time. But hey, I didn't write it, they did. As one of the first episodes of Star Trek ever produced, the production effects had yet to be fully ironed out. I can relate to that. Which is evident on the surface of the planet when Kirk and company are calling out Crewman Green report. While the characters are supposed to be outside on an open plain, the way their voices sound makes it very obvious that the actors are calling out on an enclosed indoor stage. Professor Crater's phaser is a reused laser pistol from The Cage. The statue near the entrance of the Crater home can later be seen in Spock's quarters in Amok Time in subsequent episodes. In a blooper shot, a man's arm can be seen putting a cigar into the statue's mouth. Could you just imagine that? The opening and closing theme music, composed and arranged by Alexander Courage, utilizing an electric violin, was used for the first 9 aired episodes and was recorded during the scoring sessions for this episode. On home video and syndication, Only Where No Man Has Gone Before contains the original end credit music. The remainder of the first season episodes used the Fred Steiner arranged cello theme recorded at the same time as the score for The Corbomite Maneuver, Balance of Terror, and What Are Little Girls Made Of? All right. Here's where it starts getting negative. Variety published a very negative review of Star Trek in its 14 September 1966 issue based on this episode, stating the series won't work. The reviewer called the show dreary and confusing and stated that it would be better suited to the Saturday morning kidvid block. Surprised on how Star Trek made it to television. However, the critic conceded that the leading performers were trying very hard to appear credible. If only that critic knew. TV Guide also printed a negative review of the series in its 10 September fall premiere issue, stating that the sky is not the limit for this Trek. This was the first Star Trek episode that David Gerrold viewed. Watching it upon its first airing, Gerrold was thrilled by what he saw, later reminiscing, "I watched it eagerly. I was amazed that something this imaginative had made it to television." The episode also made an impression on future Star Trek Enterprise staff writer Chris Black, who was in kindergarten at the time he saw the installment. "I remember seeing the salt vampire, the M113 creature, and running out of the room in terror," Black recalled with a chuckle, while working as a writing staffer on Enterprise. Actress Grace Lee Whitney considers the Arboretum scene of Rand and Sulu as one of her favorite scenes of the series. She recalled that shooting the scene was very funny, and the entire cast and crew were in a light-hearted atmosphere. Some dirty jokes were told in connection with Beauregard and her, and even the puppeteer below the table, Bob Baker, no relation to Josh Baker that I know of, tried to reach for a short skirt with the puppet. Whitney later described this episode as filled with plenty of horrific and suspenseful moments. It was a great debut episode for the series. In the 1983 Leonard Nimoy hosted documentary Star Trek Memories, he mentioned that the fact that NBC chose to air this episode first, since, at least to the network, it was proper science fiction with a proper alien menace. Nimoy also stated that of the episodes the cast and crew had already completed, this was their least favorite. Yeah, least favorite. So you start off with it first. You see the logic? I don't either. The preview trailer for this episode has the star date of 13/24.1, and the sick bay is called the dispensary in this episode. Let me finish this beer. Empties the brain cells of the average Dallas Cowboys fan. Alright, well, with that being said, if there's anything you think could have been done better, could have been done worse, leave it below. I'll look at it and I'll see what I can do. With that being said, you know what time it is, right? That's right. It is time to depart. So everybody take care. Have an awesome night or day. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, and if you do, name it after me. Don't drink and drive, because, well, you might spill your drink. But worse yet, you might kill yourself or somebody else. And drinking and driving is dumber than being a Patriots fan. And what's worse than that is rooting for people like Tom. Giselle won't let me go to the Pro Bowl. Brady. Men slapping women. Racism. Animal abuse. Fake friends. People that welch on bets. Or anybody who is a member of or supports the Westboro Baptist Church. Things like that are just plain stupid, and I don't have time for it. That being said, I'm out of here. I'll see y'all next week. Live long and prosper.